Earlier this year, I made the biggest purchase in my life. I bought my very first car. And even though I thought I did my homework, spent hours researching, comparing, asking around, the final process still threw me some curveballs. In the end, there were some wins, a few regrets, and a lot of things I want to tell you about that I wish I knew before I bought my car. And that's why I'm filming this video, because I want to share 7 things I wish I knew before buying the car so you don't have to deal with the regret. My name is April. I'm a 23-year-old tech girly living in Seattle, and this will be the start of my adulting series where I talk all things adulting as I navigate through them. And without further ado, here are the 7 things I wish I knew before buying my first car. Lesson number 1 is choosing between used and new. I understand that this is a topic that's covered everywhere already, so I'll make sure to make it quick. And I'll just briefly go through the benefits of each option. So the benefits of buying a new car is that you have all the latest accessories. You might have cruise control, self-driving, Apple CarPlay, the new USB-C plug, and etc. Another benefit of buying a new is that it's straight from the car dealership, which means that any major mechanical breakdowns will be covered in the first couple of years. But the benefits of buying a used car is that it's highly affordable. When you buy a new car, the car depreciates a lot in the first couple of years, and it depreciates at a slower pace every year compared to the previous year. And as you can see in the graph, in the first year, the car is expected to depreciate 20% of its original value, and the car is also expected to depreciate by 50% in the first 5 years. A good example of that would be when our family first came to the United States back in 2015. We bought a 6-year-old car that's a 2009 Honda Accord. We bought it for around $13K. We didn't sell it until 2022, so we drove it for 7 years, and the final selling price was $4,000. So we technically only spent $11K on the car itself during 7 whole years, which makes the car really affordable. However, I also want to note a caveat. Because of the COVID pandemic, we have a worldwide silicone shortage, and the secondhand car market is still very hot right now, and it's still overpriced, which is why I decided to buy a new car. So I bought my 2024 Subaru Forester Premium for $3,200, and I found the secondhand car with similar specs from Carfax selling for $29,485. And this is a 2023 model. So a new car, as you remember from the previous chart, is supposed to depreciate by about 20% in the first year. But the price of this car is only 8% less than my 2024 Subaru Forester Premium, making it not worth it. And that is why I decided to buy a new car instead. I have a general rule of thumb to decide whether you should buy a new or used car. Number 1, if you're a newbie driver who's never really driven a lot before, I would recommend that you buy a used car because repairs are very expensive, and it is almost guaranteed that you will scratch your car at some point. So a used car will make it hurt less when you do get that eventual scratch or dent. If you're a pretty good driver looking to upgrade your car, then in the current market, it makes more sense to buy a new car. Just a disclaimer, I'm not giving any financial advices, and everything I said is purely my opinion, and that everything also varies a lot on a case-by-case scenario. But I still do want to warn people who decided to buy a second-hand car. I think it's very important to make sure that you run your checks and inspections before making the purchase, or choose a trustworthy third party such as CarMax or Carfax. Since I decided I'm buying a new car, I will have a lot of car dealerships around my area selling the same model. I will have to call them and bargain with each of them, trying to find the best deal for myself. So in this section, I'll show you the step-by-step process I took during that bargain process, and I'll give you some advice on what I will do if I were you. The first step I took is to compile a spreadsheet of all the dealers within a certain radius. For me, I was willing to drive up to 2 hours to get my car, so I went on Google Maps and found the information of every single Subaru dealerships in my area, and I jotted down information regarding their name, location, and their phone number. Step number 2 is to call everyone one by one to ask for their price. During this process, I would also recommend calling the dealerships that's the furthest away from you first, since ideally I don't want to go through the hassle of having to drive 2 hours, so I'm using them more as a tool to warm myself up, learn the lingo related to car dealerships, and understand what I'm looking for. I would probably not get the best prices in the first couple of calls, and that's why I'm calling the ones that's furthest away from me so that I don't take an L if I don't get a good offer. Step number 3, as you call the dealers, make sure to note down everything you want to know about the car. And that doesn't just include the price, but it also includes, for example, colors, any additional features, their local tax rate, and registration and fees. So this first time call through is an initial screening to understand whether those dealerships have the make, model, color, trim, anything particular you want, and whether they have the best price. And this is also a good chance to get a vibe check with the car dealer so you get a sense of whether they're trustworthy or not. As I'm calling, I would make sure to take note of every single detail that the dealer provided to me onto my spreadsheet. And if I see a price that is pretty good along the way, I would also make sure that the dealer sent their asking price to me via email, so I have a copy and a proof of the prices that we agreed upon. This part is also very important because as you negotiate prices between dealers, sometimes they want to prove that the other dealer is actually giving you the price instead of something that you just made up. I would then repeat the previous steps until I've reached a price that I'm happy with or until the dealers can't go down anymore. You know if you hit the perfect price because one of the dealers would tell you that they can't go down more and that you should take the previous offer you had. Caveat here I wanted to add is about the licensing and fees, because that usually is when dealers can sneak a little bit of juice in your final price. I would definitely take a note of every dealer's licensing and fees, and if there's one dealer that charges particularly high for the licensing and fees, then I would ask for a detailed breakdown of what exactly they're doing so that I can make sure that they're not just sneaking money into the licensing and fees. By following this process, the difference between my highest bid and my lowest bid was a shocking $1,800, and the whole process only took me 3 or 4 hours, so I think that the bargain process is totally worth it. Oh, and also, while I'm still at my desk, let's do some number crunching together. Lesson number 3 is that taxes do matter. I live in Seattle, Washington, and the sales tax here is 10.6%. However, my parents live not too far away in Portland, Oregon, where the sales tax is 0%. Now, theoretically, if the MSRP of the car that I'm looking at is $30K, then I would be saving a whopping $3,000 if I bought my car in Portland as opposed to in Washington, right? Well, the government, of course, is aware of that. And if you're gonna register your license in Washington, you'll have to pay the Washington tax even if you made your car purchase in the state of Oregon. However, because I have a valid Oregon address, I could potentially save $3,000 by making my car purchase in Oregon, but I just decided to not do that. At the same time, this also works the other way around. I have a friend who's from New York and has a New York driver's license. Earlier this year, he also bought a car here in Seattle and he paid the 10% sales tax. Now, he moved back to New York, and because he wanted to change his licensed vehicle to New York State, the state of New York is asking him to pay additional sales tax on the car for the New York government. And even though he can appeal the process because he did technically pay Washington tax already, it would just be a very long process to do so. I also want to acknowledge that I am not encouraging any tax fraud of any kind, but what I'm trying to say here is that taxes do matter a lot, and you just have to be aware of it when you make your decision to purchase a car. Welcome to my parking lot where I pay $250 per month for the space. I'm bringing it here because I thought it would be a perfect place to illustrate my next lesson. Lesson number 4, the phantom cost of car ownership. The price to buy a car is not the only price that you'll have to pay. Instead, there's a lot of other fees that I have to pay, and I'll just go through my example. In order to keep my car here in Seattle, I also have to pay these fees. So my monthly payment for my car is $420. Parking is $250 a month. Gas kind of varies by the month, but let's just say $80 per month because I'm in downtown, so I don't drive my car every single day. In addition to that, insurance is $200. I gotta admit that I did kind of get ripped off for insurance because I could be paying a lot less, but more on that later. Regular maintenance includes, for example, car wash, buying accessories for the car, installing a dash cam, oil changes, tire rotations, regular services done to your car, and those don't happen all the time, but I would save about $100 per month so that I have the cash flow to pay for those things. In addition to that, I also save about $100 per month for my car emergency fund. In case anything happened to my car, then I can use that fund to make sure that I have the fund to fix my car. And the total of that is an overwhelming $1,050 per month, which is 2.5 times the price of my car down payment. And I just want to illustrate a point. So when you're buying a car, definitely make sure that you are aware of how much it truly is instead of just looking at the number of the car itself. Lesson number 5. Protecting your car. Alright, I guess this lesson is more relevant for people who live in cities like me. I just want to say, I don't know what's going on, but car smashing has become so common nowadays. Out of all the people I know who own a car in Seattle, I think everyone has had their windows broken, and I've also experienced my fair share of window breaking. The first time when I was driving my old 2009 Honda Accord up to Seattle for my internship, and I made a stop in downtown Portland, and that's when my car window got smashed. And my car window got smashed again working in Capitol Hill of Seattle during my internship back in 2022. So ever since then, I've learned my lesson and I try to keep my car as clean as possible. I don't leave anything in the car, and if I do have to leave something, I put them in the trunk so I make sure no one sees it. Because when my car got broken into during my internship, I actually didn't have a lot of valuables, but I had my climbing bag, which only has my climbing shoes and chalks, and that bag was the only thing that got stolen. I don't recommend keeping an empty bag in the car, because if you were the thief and you're trying to break into someone's car, you would check if they have a bag, and you have to act quick, so you wouldn't care what's in that bag or if it's empty or not. So I think my recommendation would be to make sure you leave no belongings in cars, and also if it's relevant, it might be a good idea to install dash cams. I don't have it installed yet, but I think I'm planning to do that in the near future. And lesson number 6 would be tips to lower your insurance. When I bought my car, I was rushed into making a choice about which insurance I'm buying. Because I didn't do enough research, I ended up having to pay way more than what I'm supposed to be paying for insurance. But since now I've done my fair share of research, I can share with you some of the tips on lowering your insurance or making sure that you get a fair price for your insurance. Insurance is cheaper for older folks. If you want to insure someone else to drive your car and they started driving before you, then it might be a good idea to add them as the primary owner being protected by the insurance, because that can reduce the cost. And also make sure to price compare, because different insurance do offer different rates, so it's always a good thing to compare your prices. In terms of getting a quote, insurance companies do require a vehicle's registration or VIN number, so make sure to have that handy, because there were multiple times when I was trying to get a quote but then I don't have the VIN number, so they could only give me the estimated quote, which is a lot different from what you actually will be paying. But at the same time, make sure to do your research on the company as well, because while Geico, Progressive, State Farm are some of the more well-known and reliable insurance companies, there are some insurance companies out there that charge you a very little amount of money, but that also means that the claim process is really hard. Make sure to do your research, look at customer reviews, Reddit posts, anything you can to make sure that the auto insurance company you're purchasing from is legit and actually covers when it comes to the time when you want to file a claim. Since currently I'm insured with Geico, I wanted to add a note on Geico. This video is not sponsored by anyone, so this is my honest opinion on Geico, is that Geico recently had this Drive Easy program, and it's a program where it can give you somewhere between 5 to 20% off your current insurance, but I am advocating against this program because I think it is a scam and it does more harm than benefit. First, you must have cell phone connection at all times and download their Geico app, and they will track your location 24 hours, and you have to drive your car at least once every 15 days. So basically you have to allow Geico to stalk you 24/7 in order to get the 5 to 20% off. But what's the worst is that while Geico is tracking you, they also take note of how your driving style is, and they will dock you points if you don't display safe driving styles, and they will increase your insurance price in the next term if you get docked too many points. Based on the reviews I've seen, their tracking app isn't even accurate, so I don't think I would trust an inaccurate app to tell me that I'm a bad driver, because I was scrolling on my phone the whole time when I was just having my apps and music open and playing. I would highly recommend everyone to not enroll in the Geico policy, because it's a terrible idea that no one should participate in. And with that being said, it brings us to the most important lesson of the day: understanding the why. Buying a car is probably the biggest purchase that we'll be making in our 20s, and new cars especially drop in values really fast. So before you buy a car, it's really worth asking, do you really need a new car, or are you just swept up in the new car feeling? Of course, we all want a fresh new car with all the fresh scent and the cool gadgets, but if your current car still works, then maybe it's not quite the time to let it go yet. And for those of us in the city, this question is even more important. Let's be real. Even if you take Ubers every single day and take car rentals in the weekends, the price you'll pay for that cannot compare to the price that you'll be paying once you get a new car. And that is because of the expensive parking and gas situation in the cities. So if your car is not going to make your life way easier, or it doesn't bring true joy, then I think maybe it's not the time to get a car yet. For me, I had the internal debate for about 6 months before finally making a decision to buy a car. Driving simply saves me so much time in a city like Seattle with really crappy transit system. And it also makes life way easier when I go back to visit my family in Portland, because it is way more flexible to drive there than to take the Amtrak. And I don't have to ever rely on Amtrak ever again, because it is it's never on time. Having a car also gives me the freedom that I've been longing for. And that means I can go hiking anytime I want, going on camping trips in the summer, and snowboarding trips in the winter. And I'll never have to worry about begging other people for rides ever again. So before jumping in, I really recommend you to take the time and ask yourself whether buying a new car is actually what you need right now. Because at the end of the day, all this adulting thing, it's about making choices that work for you, not just right now, but in the long run. And with that, I wish you the best of luck in your car buying journey. Thank you so much. Bye!